Hey y'all, if you weren't already aware, May is Mental Health Awareness Month and Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I think what's interesting about those two things happening in the month of May is that within the Asian community, there really isn't a lot of conversation happening around mental health. I think there's been a lot of progress made in recent years pushing that conversation forward, but at the same time, there's always more room for conversation. So, with us today to talk more about mental health within the Asian community and her personal experience with that journey is my friend Tanya Ahluwalia. Tanya is an Indonesian and Indian American immigrant and artist. She has lived in more than 3 countries, but now calls San Francisco home. She is a presentation designer for Google's Media Lab via Essence, which is the ad agency I also happen to work for. And outside of work, she often shares her sketches on social media, is a chapter leader for Ladies Wine and Design, a networking organization for women designers, and is an advocate for mental health awareness. Hey, Tanya.
Hi, John. Thank you for that really nice introduction.
Of course. Thank you for being here today. We're here because we want to talk about like our respective journeys as it comes to mental health, especially as being Asian immigrants. So I want to start by asking you to share your immigrant journey with us, starting from when you were born, because I think you've had a very, very fascinating journey to get to where you are now.
So I was born here in the U.S., in Orange County specifically. And then before I was even a year old, my family moved back to Indonesia. So my dad is half Indian, half Indonesian. He grew up in Indonesia, but my grandfather, he's originally from India. And my mom is an Indian from India who he married. Before I was a year old, we actually moved back to Indonesia. I was there for about 21, 22 years. And then I moved to Malaysia for a little bit. And then at the age of 24, my parents were like, okay, we're going to move back to the United States now. And so at 24, when your parents tell you that you're moving halfway across the world where you're going to have to start your life from scratch, it was a lot to take in. But yeah, I've been here now for close to 5 years. It'll be 5 years this summer. But yeah, that's my journey so far. I hope I don't have to
like in a little bit of a nutshell, as much as you're able to summarize it. What role did mental health play in your life growing up? Was it something that you were always aware of?
There's been 2 prominent moments in my life where where mental health was involved, and when it came. So when I was around 14 or 15, I had severe depression. At that time, it wasn't so much of a taboo, but it was still something that your parents were concerned with. When I wasn't eating, I was losing weight, and I was just like my friends noticed that something was wrong with me. I wasn't the same person that I was. And my parents took me to a doctor who then said, like, I think she needs to see a psychiatrist and probably start seeing a therapist and probably get her medicated, because it seems like it's a pretty severe case. So when my parents heard that, they felt like they failed. They felt like they didn't properly raise me. And that was like one of the reasons why I had to see a therapist. I went to therapy because I had to, not because I wanted to. I think it's because my parents saw it as such a negative and horrible thing that was happening to our family that I had to seek therapy, that I felt like something was terribly wrong with me, that I somehow failed to be a normal person. And so that took, so during that age, it was honestly like very, very awkward, had a lot of low moments.
A question for you.
From 18, go ahead.
With whatever you're comfortable sharing, you mentioned that you started to experience depression when you were 14. What kind of triggered that?
Yeah, so this is probably the most, there's going to be a lot of interesting things that come up when you talk to someone who's been through like a journey like this, and this is one of them. Nothing. There was nothing in my life that made me feel like something was was bad. My parents did everything right. You know, we had troubles, we had issues in our family, yes, but they always made me feel safe and secure. Nothing to an extent where, you know, you know, that I didn't want to live. You know,
Yeah.
it wasn't that extreme. Like no one, I wasn't in a dangerous environment or anything like that. So I honestly don't know. Till
Mhm.
today, I don't really know what, well, like where it stemmed from. I just know that it did manifest, and it did very, very quickly. And
Wow.
it was just something that I, maybe one day I get to know why I had, you know, depression at such a young age. But for now, it does remain a mystery. And then from 18 to 23 is when I had probably like the biggest life changes.
Mm.
Um, One of it was I lost someone that was very, very close to me,
Mhm.
and my family struggled with a lot of financial issues,
Mhm.
and there was a lot of moving. This is the period where, you know, went from Indonesia to Malaysia and here to the United States. So a lot of things changed during that time. And then between the ages of 23 and now, where, you know,
Mhm.
I just turned 29, is when I realized that I had a lot of unresolved
Mhm.
issues. And that's when I told myself, like, oh, like, yeah, now I want to go to therapy. I want to unravel all of these things, all of these thoughts that are going through my head.
Wow. So it's been such a stark shift, right? From when you first
Yeah.
like it was something like a doctor had to like make your parents bring you to, and then now it's something that you're seeking out on your own. How have you become more comfortable in seeking out those resources for yourself?
Basically, I mentioned before, like, you know, there was a couple of years where it was like insane transitions in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, there was just so much going on where I realized that I had to step it up as a daughter, as an older sibling, that I needed to be there for my family because we were going through something collectively, like
Mm-hmm.
together. By the time I turned 24, 25 was when things really stabilized, where, you know, I knew that I was going to be in the US for a while. I got a stable job, got health insurance, did everything right. And that's when I realized that I was unhappy,
Mm-hmm.
and I was very confused because I looked at myself in the mirror and I told myself, like, you have everything you want. You have, you know, you have an apartment, you have a car, you support your family financially, you take care of your little sister. You've done everything right
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, any parent and yourself, like any person would be proud of. But for
Mm-hmm.
some reason, I was still really, really sad. And that's when I realized, like, I think there's something that is buried beneath all of this. And so that's when I decided to I realized that I didn't have a safe place to talk about my feelings.
So
So
let's talk about that. For those that aren't aware, like tell us a bit more about like why, you know, why maybe you couldn't feel like you were able to share your feelings with your family, who is supposed to be your first support system, right?
that's correct. Yeah.
Mhm.
I guess probably, like, I mean, I can't speak for every family, every Asian
Mhm.
family out
Mhm.
there, but just my personal experience is that my my parents have gone through a lot, and it's one of those things where, like, um I guess being like an immigrant, kind of like a
Mhm.
late immigrant, you know, I feel like I showed up here like a little late. Um it's just the idea of, you want to achieve,
Mhm.
you don't want to show any sense of weakness in you,
Mhm.
because you realize you're it took so much from your parents to get here to
Mhm.
provide for you, that you know that your only one goal in life is to, you know, achieve, you know, all the success and glory, as a way to, you know, make your parents proud,
Mhm.
and kind of like, you know, make them realize, like, oh, like, all your sacrifices wasn't for nothing.
Do your parents know that you are that you're going through therapy now?
They do. It's not something that they fully understand, but
Mhm.
at the same time, I don't expect them to.
Mhm.
I think one thing that I've learned, you know, for, you know, going through this, you know, for years now is that I have to be very patient with my parents. They were not raised the same way I was. You know, they did not have the resources that I do today.
Mm-hmm.
And to realize that makes me think like, it's okay if they don't understand this now. It'll take them a while to catch up, but it's okay, because I guess the way I look at it, the reason why I really support people who say they want to go to therapy and like
Mm-hmm.
encourage it in a way for people who feel like they need it, is because it is a way for me to kind of like make sure I didn't project my past traumas to new people that I was meeting, making sure
Wow.
I was watching my patterns, the choices of words that people would say or the things that they would do that triggered me,
Mm-hmm.
uh, to spiral into like, my anxiety and, back into, being depressed again. And then so this is what therapy helps me with. And so I I don't only go to therapy for myself. I also do it because it helps create a calming effect when I'm at home, where I
Mm-hmm.
have learned to not control my emotions. I think it's more of like not reacting to situations, but always
Mm-hmm.
responding to them.
Responding. Yeah.
Whenever my parents would say something that I don't agree with, or something that would like trigger like a childhood trauma or something like that, I'm able to identify that this is a trigger and not cause more disruption or chaos, and just kind of like control it and be like, okay, well, I'm just going to realize that this is a pattern and I won't go down that path. I know better. And then you just you get better that way. And so my parents may not understand why I go to therapy, but a big reason as to why I do it is because it's for them.
That kind of leads me to my next question, which is acknowledging the fact that therapy isn't always, accessible to everyone. It is definitely a privilege to have that as a resource. So I want to ask you, from as someone that has been able to access it over these years, for those that might not be able to access it, what are kind of like the, I guess, the words of wisdom or the lessons that that you think you're able to impart?
One technique, when you see yourself having like, when you feel like an attack is coming, what you do is that you have to stay in the present. And so
Mm,
what you do, you try to observe things. So one thing that you can do is look around and find three things of the same color, let's say red. And then so you kind of like distract your mind a little bit and you're like, oh, okay, that's red, and then that's red, and then that's red. And that's a way of, it's kind of like grounding. It's called
mm.
grounding technique. So you can,
Centering yourself in a way.
yes, pretty much. It could be like other things as well. It's like, oh, like yeah, like colors is just like the easiest thing that, for people. It's like, oh, like notice anything that's blue in this room, and they just kind of like look around and things like that. So that's called grounding, and it's actually helped me a lot whenever I would go through like having an anxiety attack, or like anticipate that one was coming. And another thing my therapist taught me was, you don't have to have 100% of hope, just have 10% of hope.
Hmm.
And when she said that, she was like, when you're scared about something, and you can't be so hopeful and dreamy about it, just 10% of hope. And when she said that, I remember I started crying, and she was like, what are you feeling right now? And I said, I'm feeling relief.
Wow.
Like, I felt relieved over the idea that I did not have to be 100%, you know confident and brave
Yeah.
about something. Like, giving 10% of hope was sometimes enough just to carry me through.
So thank you so much for sharing those like very tangible tips to just navigate like our thoughts, because I think at the end of the day, like that's a big part of therapy, right? It's about controlling our thought process versus letting our thought process control us. And I didn't mention this earlier, but just for the folks that are watching, for their own awareness, Tanya is one of the people that really inspired me to seek out therapy and mental health resources, and to kind of acknowledge that hurt from the past, and to be able to recognize it and not let it continue to hold me back from, living the life that I want to live. So thank you for being so open, because it's helped me. And I think, it's for any time that someone shares um, their journey like this, I think it impacts people. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for starting this, John. It's really important, and I'm so proud of you. And thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
This has been wonderful. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.